ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। My grateful pranams to most revered Swami Gautamananda Ji Maharaj. My namaskarams and greetings to all my brother monks as well as brahmacharis and my dear devotees and friends. I am extremely privileged to be present here. These celebrations are organized in the context of Sri Ramakrishna's birthday celebration, which had taken place the last month. The topic given to us is Sri Ramakrishna. Every time we celebrate the birthdays of great people, we have to recollect what is it we are doing, why we are doing it, and how we should do it, and in what practical ways these celebrations are going to transform our lives. Today, Sri Ramakrishna is worshipped literally by millions of people. Swamiji, as we all know, had established this Ramakrishna order, which consists of 3 strands. The monks, lay devotees like you, and many friends and admirers, without whose help it would be impossible to carry on the various activities of the Ramakrishna order. Swamiji had called Sri Ramakrishna as a Yugavatara. One of the hymns that we are supposed to sing every single day, each facet of an avatara is worth studying for a long time. One of the important points that we always have to keep in mind is Swami Vivekananda's statement, "I have given food for 1000 years," meaning that the ideas that are propagated by any avatara would last for a yuga. And in my understanding, a yuga is almost 1000 years. Probably by that time, that particular ideology would not be very fashionable, though the truths which are eternal would continue, but under the changed circumstances, these very teachings have to be slightly modified in their practical application. That's what revered Swami Ranganathanji Maharaj, in his name there are 4 books, Eternal Values for a Changing Society. Every time God incarnates, He will present the same eternal truths, but the expression and the manifestation would be slightly changing according to the needs of the social circumstances, etc. Whenever God incarnates, and in India we call him Avatarana, God comes down to our level so that he can make a bridge. Like in Ramayana, Sri Rama employed Hanuman. Hanuman stands for the Mukhya Prana Guru, who built a bridge between Rama the Paramatman and Sita the Jivatman, who is kidnapped and stranded across the ocean. That ocean is Bhavasagara, Samsara Sagara. The Guru is the one who brings Jivatma and Paramatma together. And that is the main purpose of an avatara. He comes down so that he can take us also to his stature. Whenever God incarnates, four wonderful phenomena take place. First of all, his very name becomes a Mahamantra. Rama came, Ramanama. Krishna came, Krishna Mantra. Jesus came, Jesus Mantra. Buddha came, Buddha Mantra. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Ramakrishna came, and Ramakrishna's name is the Mahamantra, which is guide, a wonderful, inspiring guide for all of us for ages together. The second phenomena, every form of an incarnation becomes a form worthy of being meditated upon. Dhyana Rupa. Nama Rupa, Dhyana Rupa. The third phenomena that takes is the life and teachings of an incarnation. They become an inspiration and a guideline. The life becomes an inspiration to all of us, and the teachings of this incarnation becomes a guideline how we could live our normal life and transform it into a spiritual life. So Nama, Rupa, then Jivana, then Sadhana. The fourth phenomena that takes place is inevitably an organization springs in the name of the avatara, whose purpose is to preserve, to promote, to propagate, and to explain his life and teachings as unerring guidelines according to changing circumstances. This is a wonderful phenomena. We have to always keep in mind, society is ever changing. Simple example I will give you. Even the most intelligent futurologist cannot even imagine what it's going to be like in 3000. Not to speak of 900 years hence. But these incarnations, teachings, must guide every erring soul for the next 1000 years. Perhaps we cannot even imagine in this latest way what would be society like in another 100 years' time. So these are the four phenomena. The name becomes a Mahamantra, the form becomes an object of adoration, meditation, and finally it leads to visions of God, and he becomes the Ishtadevata, chosen ideal for generations to come. And in it, his life and teachings become the only guideline. Swami Vivekananda made a statement, it's really a commandment, says one cannot study scriptures independently. One should always study and try to understand any scripture in the light of the life and teachings of a present incarnation of God. This concept of an avatara is the ancient ideal. Hindus always believed whenever dharma declines, and I am going to speak about what is dharma. Whenever dharma declines, God incarnates there to establish or to re-establish dharma. And how does an incarnation really establish dharma? In the contemporary language, most often the word dharma is identified only with certain particular duties. But that's a secondary meaning of dharma. The word dharma must have three meanings. The word dharma must clarify 3 points. Every student, every brahmachari must learn 3 things, then only he is really a brahmachari or real student. The primary meaning of dharma, the first meaning of dharma is nature. What's my real nature? In English language, there is a suffix. We use it ness. Chair-ness, cow-ness, table-ness, meaning its essential nature, without which that object would not be that object. So, what is our true nature? This is the primary meaning. When human beings, meaning all of us, forget who we really are, and as a result of it, we become deluded, like Arjuna became deluded. Very wonderful phenomena. Arjuna was overcome by unimaginable suffering, Vishada Yoga. The first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is very aptly titled as Arjuna Vishada Yoga. It has been titled as yoga because that which joins us with God is called yoga. Vishada, suffering, only when it directs us towards God and helps us to move towards God can it be called yoga. Otherwise it has to be called as roga. In the end, after teaching the whole Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna asks only one question of Arjuna. Have you heard my teachings with one pointed mind? Kaschidetat shrutam partha vayikagrena chetasa kaschid ajnana sammoha pranashtaste dhananjaya. Have you heard my teachings with shraddha, with one pointed mind? If you had done it, then the result, inevitable result should be your moha, your delusion. That means you would not be confused about who you really are. That should have been the result. If we know who we are, we will be free from every type of tapatraya, suffering. And Arjuna's categorical answer was, Nashto mohaha. My delusion is gone. Then he uses a most marvelous word, smritihi labdha. I obtained my memory. And we have to be grateful to Shankaracharya. He says, what is that smriti? Atma smriti. I know who I am. I was thinking I was Arjuna, but now I know I am the Atma. If I am the Atma, Bhishma, Drona, Duryodhana, Dushasana, everyone on this earth will be only Atman and nothing else. And that is the primary meaning of dharma, to remind us who we really are. This is called, in technical language, tattva. The next is, if I am potentially divine, I am a child of God, what should be the goal of life? Only one. I should try to become myself and thereafter remain as myself. And this is called Purushartha. Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. Moksha means to be only myself and not anybody else. Until we reach that state, we are all madcaps. It is said once, Prime Minister or past Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru visited a lunatic asylum in Ranchi. And all the inmates were called together to greet him. One of them asked Nehru, "Who are you, sir?" And it seems Nehru replied, "I am Jawaharlal Nehru, I am the Prime Minister of India." The inmate said that you have come to the right place. I was also telling people that I am the Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, Prime Minister. Now I know what I am. You will be all right very soon. So, until we know who we really are, there would be no release from this bondage of samsara. That is the Purushartha, to know who we really are. This is called Purushartha. Then there must be a third thing, third factor, which is how to reach that goal. And that is called Hita. And now, if we recollect Swami Vivekananda's words in 3 sentences, which most of us know by heart, each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity within by controlling nature, external and internal. And do this, meaning manifest this divinity within either by work or worship or psychic control or philosophy, by one, more, or all of this together, and we F-R-E-E, free. And this is what the meaning of dharma is, to know what is my real nature and what is my goal of life and how to manifest and become what we really are. These are the 3 meanings of dharma, and whenever we forget, we seem to suffer a lot, and that is when God incarnates. And whenever God incarnates, certain functions take place. First of all, every avatara proves the fact that God exists, God is, and God can be realized, and God must be realized, and there is no option. The only option is, do I want to realize Him now or later on? But there is no option with regard to whether we want to become spiritual or we want to remain secular. Second, an avatara proves the validity, the truthfulness of all the scriptures. As some of you know, many of you may not know, Sri Ramakrishna had plunged into sadhana 3 times. First time, without the help of any guru, purely through his intense yearning for God. There was no guru, there was no scripture, there was no guideline, like a small child, depending entirely upon the Divine Mother. And he was getting wonderful cues, what to practice, what not to practice. Just to mention a few examples, go and clean the lavatory of the lavatory cleaners. Put off your cloth, put up your sacred thread, take a lump of clay and a rupee coin and go on saying, Mati taka, taka mati. These type of practices which he had undertaken purely through the intuitive mind as direct guideline from the Divine Mother was unheard of in our scripture. But that's what an avatara does. He validates every scripture of the world, not only one's own scripture. And in essence, there is only one scripture expressed in so many ways, because truth is one. Then an avatara also, he travels all the paths that were existing and proves their effectiveness. An avatara doesn't come to destroy, an avatara comes only to fulfill. Not only he removes all the dirt and coverings which obscure our paths. That means various paths followed by various people in the past. He makes them alive again through his practices and makes them extremely effective. Not only that, he also discovers, according to changing circumstances, new pathways for the realization of God. For example, Sri Ramakrishna had introduced two new pathways which is unheard of in the past. First is Vyakulata Yoga. Yes, Raghavacharya, a professor at the Mysore University, he had beautifully delineated this. Sri Ramakrishna, through his first sadhana, purely through Vyakulata, Parama Vyakulata, he realized God in every aspect. He realized God in his both Sakara, Nirakara. He also attained both types of samadhis, Savichara, Nirvichara, Savitarka, Nirvitarka. And he proved that there is absolutely no difference between these paths. I will come to that point slightly later on. Then the avatara also comes to unify every field of life. In other words, there is nothing superior, nothing inferior. Any stage of life, any type of work that we undertake, at any age, man and woman, Shudra and Brahmana, a person following Advaita, Visishta Advaita, provided they are sincere, they will reach exactly the same goal. And Sri Ramakrishna's life is a standing testimony for this unification. The world has known Sri Ramakrishna as a Samanvaya Acharya, as a prophet of harmony and synthesis. And it was Sri Ramakrishna who taught the world the highest truths through the instrumentality, medium of Swami Vivekananda. There was a very interesting phenomena which I will not go into details. I was mentioning earlier, Sri Ramakrishna had practiced his first sadhana without the help of any teacher or any scripture, but realized the highest truth solely through Parama Vyakulata. The second sadhana that Sri Ramakrishna had undertaken, with the help of teachers, Bhairavi Brahmani, Totapuri, Govinda, etc., and with the help of the scriptures, to prove to people like us that every scripture is true, every teacher can also help. In fact, most of us cannot travel the path of intuition, Vyakulata, because we are not such pure people. For us, a definite teacher, a definite guideline, with humility and with Shraddha, we have to follow, then only there is hope that we can progress in spiritual life. To prove this, Sri Ramakrishna had undertaken all over again, second time, the sadhana. The third sadhana, about which very few people in this world know, is called Narendra sadhana. How Sri Ramakrishna had to bring the mind of that Saptarshi, Narendranath, to this world in which we are all living, to make him loving and lovable, to make him identify himself with all of us, and to make him an instrument of his own teaching. For that, Sri Ramakrishna had dedicated 4.5 years, until a few days before the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna. He put Narendranath into deep samadhi, and after a few hours, When Narendra came back to external consciousness, he found Sri Ramakrishna shedding tears and said, "Oh Naren, today I have become a fakir, having emptied myself into you." Perhaps some people misunderstand this statement. Sri Ramakrishna was not regretting. He was not thinking that I lost everything by giving it to somebody. Fakir means a sannyasi. A sannyasi means he who totally merges in God is a fakir, is a sannyasi. Sri Ramakrishna completely identified himself with Naren. Henceforward, he said, I shall work through you. That is why Swamiji used to say, I am a voice without a form. I mentioned earlier that Sri Ramakrishna is called a Samanvaya Acharya. He is a prophet of harmony and synthesis. Even today the world has to realize, and has not yet realized, the wonderful harmony that Sri Ramakrishna had brought about in every field of life. But of these harmonies, it is one harmony branched into eightfold way. I call it eightfold harmony of Sri Ramakrishna. First of all, he brought about that every religion is true. Sri Ramakrishna's pithy words, in the shortest possible words, there is a world of meaning. His most often quoted statement in Bengali language is Jato mat tato pad. As many faiths, so many paths. He is reiterating the ancient Rigvedic truth, Ekam sat vipraha bahudha vadanti. Truth is one, but sages call it by various names. Again, he is reinforcing Sri Krishna's statement that all men, ye yatha mam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham mama vartmani anvartante manushyaha partha sarvashaha. Everyone is following my path. Me here is only the truth, potential divinity, not Krishna. Sri Ramakrishna used to very often, very less of I. He used to say, mother, my mother. So, harmony of religions. Every religion takes one to the same goal for the simple reason there is only one goal. Had there been at least two goals, then there could have been a choice. Shall I choose this or that? Only one goal and the manifestation of our own potential divinity. Second, Sri Ramakrishna had harmonized and synthesized and said the three schools of Indian philosophy, and every school of philosophy in the whole world, past, present and future, can be divided into these three: Dvaita, Visishtadvaita and Advaita. Dualism, qualified non-dualism and non-dualism. Because there is no other way. This is man's progress. Sri Ramakrishna's gospel gives us a telling example. Sri Rama once asked Hanuman, how do you look upon me? Meaning, what's our relationship? Hanuman replied, implying this statement which we just now made, when I think I am the body, you are my master and I am your servant. Deha buddhyatu dasoham. But when I think I am an individual soul and you are the Paramatma, supreme soul, you are the whole and I am the part. This is representing Visishtadvaita. But when I think you are the Atman, Atma buddhya tvamevaham iti me nischita matihi deha buddhyatu dasoham jiva buddhya tvadamshakaha atma buddhya tvamevaham iti me nischita matihi. This is my confirmed, experienced statement. When I think I am the Atman, there is absolutely no you or me, only one truth stands. This is the samanvaya of dualism, qualified non-dualism, and non-dualism. And this is what Sister Nivedita points out in her introduction to the complete works of Swamiji. Dualism and qualified non-dualism are not opposed or conflict, but they are two steps leading to the highest, which is Advaita. Sri Ramakrishna also harmonized and synthesized. There is no Saguna or Nirguna, God with form, without form, God with qualities, without qualities. One is not inferior and the other is not superior. They are two aspects of the same, expressed in Sri Ramakrishna's most telling statement. Brahman, when looked upon as active, I call it Shakti. When there is no activity, I call him Brahman. They are not two separate aspects, not two aspects. It is how we look upon and conceive of God. God himself has no such division, and both are important so long as there is a body and there is a mind. This has deep implications that anybody worshipping any path, whether with form, without form, we will all reach exactly the same goal. But there is a caveat. I am going to speak about that caveat a little later on. Then fifth, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahudha Vadanti. Truth is one, but anybody can attain this truth, provided they are truth seekers. Not only truth speakers, but truth seekers. They are going to attain the same goal. Then there is Sri Ramakrishna also has synthesized something wonderful. Samadhis are supposed to be of two categories, and bhaktas usually categorize it. I will go to Vaikuntha, Kailasa, Devi Loka, Goloka, etc. and unable to comprehend what is it, what is called Goloka, what is Vaikuntha. I will just give a small example. When a person, a devotee of God, likes to think of God in the form of Vishnu and day and night without any respite, he sees God, he hears Vishnu, and he thinks of Vishnu, he talks of Vishnu, and he is living in the world of Vishnu. That is called Vaikuntha. In other words, it's not a different planet, it's a state of mind where the mind only conceives of God as Vishnu and as nothing else, God as Shiva but as nothing else, God as Devi and as nothing else, God as Krishna and as nothing else. There are telling examples. I'll just give you a hint. Once he remarked about Gopala Irma. She is now living in Goloka. Sri Ramakrishna also has only strengthened the Varna Ashrama Dharma, and he harmonized and synthesized. There are 4 stages of life, and each one is called an ashrama. The word ashrama is usually understood as a monastery where monks and nuns live. But no, Hinduism doesn't say that. It says every stage of life is an ashrama. A student completely dedicated to his particular duties in life, he is making his life an ashrama. Where he lives, that is an ashrama. A grihastha, there is no such thing called, it is a lower state, or a sannyasi is a higher state. This idea has been so beautifully elaborated by Swamiji in his Karma Yoga. Each is great in his own place. Because in God's eyes, There is no such division at all. Then Sri Ramakrishna also has synthesized faith and reason. Faith stands for religion and reason stands for science. Faith without reason is blind, superstitious, and reason without faith is dry, it doesn't lead anywhere. There is no conflict at all between religion and science and art. That was what made Sister Nivedita remark so beautifully: religion, art, and science are three expressions of the same divinity, and all of them can attain to God, provided they use that faculty and direct it towards God and do it in a spiritual way. Finally, Sri Ramakrishna has synthesized, there is no such division, this is sacred and this is secular. We all make so much of fuss about it, that these acts, meditation, puja and pilgrimage, etc., these are all very sacred activities, but if someone is cleaning the lavatory, it's a very secular activity. No, henceforward, there is no division, because it is the same Brahman who is manifest everywhere. Then Sri Ramakrishna's teachings, we have to understand them in a spiritual way, in a particular way. There is a very danger that we can twist. There's a beautiful book about 30 years back, In God's Name. How many wars have taken place? How many people have been killed, all in the name of God? This particular book is about the corruption in one of the famous Christian monastic systems, a pope who lived only for 33 days. It is widely believed that he was murdered because he was trying to be good. The point I wanted to make is that there is nothing called sacred and secular. Any secular activity can become a sacred activity, and any sacred activity can become a secular, provided God is removed from there, Shraddha is removed from there, sincerity is removed from there. Funnily, a person who worships God in a temple is called Pujari. This word Pujari can be twisted to give the meaning. Hari means Shatru. Pujari means an enemy of God. And many pujaris behave that way. If it is just a professional action, because he is born in that way. Now, let me recollect some of the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, because we are all here to understand in the simplest manner what did Sri Ramakrishna really teach. Before I go into slight detail over it, I would like to make a statement. The teachings of Sri Ramakrishna has been collected, compiled by M. Mahendranath Gupta, who remained truly a Gupta, a hidden personality, and in every conceivable language. This book has been translated as Sri Sri Ramakrishna Kathamritam, excepting in Kannada. In Kannada, the title given is Sri Ramakrishna Vachana Veda. Veda put in the simplest possible language so that all of us can understand. And that is actually the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. So it is very important for us to understand the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. Then we must have faith in them. Then we must try to practice them. And slowly that is how transformation will come and we will become blessed. Let me summarize his teachings. First of all, he says, all are the children of God. There is no exception, there is no good, there is no evil. Everyone is a child of God. Each soul is potentially divine. All of us come from God and we are going back to God. Swami Vivekananda had given a death blow at the Parliament of Religions. First of all, he initiated them, according to me. Ancient Rishi's mantra, Shunmantu Vishve Amrutasya Putra. He infused that spirituality in them. Swamiji categorically stated later on, I have not just given lectures, I have given them something. But then, two other blows he had given. One of the blows is that no man is a sinner, and people gasped and said, what have we been hearing so long? And now what is this man is telling? It is a standing libel against humanity to call man a sinner. It is the greatest blasphemy. Sinner? No. You are the child of immortal bliss. The very foundation of one of the religions is that man is a born sinner. Here is a man who comes, a young man that too, and 2000 years of this dogma has been demolished in a trice by this one statement. Each soul is divine. You are a child of God. The third blow that he has given was that you are all talking about evolution. How do you know you are evolving? And how do you know when does evolution come to an end? Unless you know where you are going. So he said, we come from God, we have come from God, and that process is called involution. And now we are going back to God, and that is called evolution. How do we know we reached the goal? Because there would be no further evolution after we reach God. What Swamiji meant to say is, consciously or unconsciously, knowingly or unknowingly, with effort or without effort, we are all progressing towards God, and this is the meaning of true evolution, not merely biological evolution, which is physical and external, but a moral and spiritual evolution, which will take place in future internally. Human birth is the peak of biological evolution. So, all of us are children of God. Second, there is no option to spiritual life. I cannot opt and say I would not like to become spiritual. The only option is, do we want to be spiritual now or later on? Third, we can only postpone our journey but not cancel it. Fourth, God realization is the only goal of life. Next, God can be realized not by anything but by the grace of God. I am restating it again. Karma Yoga, will it lead me to God realization? No. Raja Yoga? No. Bhakti Yoga? No. Jnana Yoga? No. What can give a realization? God realization? Only God's grace. And God's grace can be obtained only through Sharanagati. God's grace can be obtained only through Sharanagati. Then what is the role of any of these yogas? To make us fit so that finally we can surrender ourselves to God. So, the only way is Bhakta or Jnani is to attain complete and total Sharanagati. This is the final message of Rama. This is the final message of Krishna in the Gita. Sarvadharman parityajya. We all know that. This is the final message of Sri Ramakrishna. Sharanagati is that process by which the last thought in Vedantic terminology called Brahmakara Vritti can be attained only by the grace of God, not by any amount of self-effort. I am again very grateful for revered Gautamanji Maharaj to give me this privilege to share some of my thoughts with you very briefly, but I hope succinctly. It is now left only May Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and Swami Vivekananda, the divine trio, bless us all with bhakti and jnana. Om Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Sritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu.